Clearly, the offer to stay in silence worked well during the break, but I hope the words that were spoken have stayed in your heart. And what I would encourage for some of the people asking questions around how do we bring this into our work? I think you asked a question around green finance and the conversations you will be in. Now, I've spent 20 years working in green finance. And green finance itself is struggling, and now is the time to be brave and to be speaking our truth from our hearts. That's what I hope, well, that's certainly what I took from the conversation this morning, and that's the invitation today. And it's about weaving these worlds together, of finding a path forward. But we have to be brave, and we can be braver if we are actually also standing together in community. So it's not an either or. This is how do we weave this into all the extraordinary work you're already doing. And this next session is a great example of doing that in the world of finance, in the world of economics. I am so extraordinarily pleased to be able to welcome to stage Kate Raworth, who I suspect needs very little introduction, but the author of Doughnut Economics, the most extraordinary book that I think she describes herself as a renegade economist, but to really think about an economics that works for all of life. And so Kate is a mother, an activist, and one of the most extraordinary people I'm delighted to call my friend. And she is joined on the stage by Dr. Kamana, and I'm actually going to use my phone because there's a couple of Hawaiian words that I will struggle without that. But Kamana has come to this conference all the way from Hawaii. He joined us along with Kate and many others on the water pilgrimage on Monday to bring his ideas, his wonderful spirituality, his energy into this conference. He is a professor and director of the Kalani Center for Hawaiian Studies at the University of Hawaii. He has been working on ancestral circular economy, so some of the ideas you heard in the first panel, how those can be woven together into the study of economy today and how we might move that forward. These two have been in collaboration before the beginning of this conference, but I know for this conference, and this is the first time they've met physically, but the connection between them and the scheming of what has gone on for what you are about to witness. I don't think it's going to be a traditional panel, but with no further words from me, I could not be more excited to welcome Kate and Kamana to the stage to take us now deeper.
O nauna I ta hala me ta lehua, e hale lehua no ia nata no e. Ta uno ia no I nei ho'i o tahiti mai. A hiti mai no outou, a hiti puno me te alohai. Aloha 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 mai kākou. Sorry, hello. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to share this incredible space together. I can't say enough about my respect and deep aloha and gratitude for Kate and all of her courageous work. And so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. This is me. I flew a long way, so if you want to stay in contact, please take a picture, and need more friends to help Aloha Āina and Hawai'i. So back? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. Great. Okay. Got the picture. Here we go. So I come from a beautiful place. In some perspectives, we're seen as the most remotely isolated islands on the planet, roughly 3,000 miles between either continent. But from an ancestral Pacific perspective, an incredible Pacific scholar, Epeli Hau'ofa, really reframed the way that we view, and in particular from a Western European context, our relationship. So we're not tiny islands in a vast sea, we're a vast sea of islands. The ocean connects us. The ocean is a mother, is a resource. There's no dark sea monsters at the end of the ocean. There's embrace and care. And I want to say that islands have played a significant role in shaping and viewing actually how we understand our world. We're in one place to understand that. Had Darwin not been on islands, he would have not seen the evolution, the rapid change in species, the relationships between nature and the ways in which we understand that shape the way that we understand the world today. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about our ancestral views that were shaped on islands and suggest maybe how they may relate to economics. This is one of our island homes. This is a place called Hawai'i. Our ancestors were intimately connected and understood and in fact deified natural systems. The water, for instance, is an akua called Kane. And they deified natural systems because those were the systems that gave life. You can see being here on these high islands and experiencing this rainfall for generations, thousands of years, you develop intimate understandings and relationships between seasonality, redistribution. What does the rain cycle do? And in fact, the water, everyone say this word, wai. Wai. Don't be ashamed, wai. There we go. Wai translates to water. And so that relationship and understanding of what water did and how it flowed intimately shaped our society. So much so that we developed these intense, familial, ancestral, kinship-like relationships with our land and resources. We heard that from our earlier panel. If everyone can say the word, you probably have heard aloha before. Aloha. Aloha, to love, to embrace, to care, to protect, to cherish. Āina. So Āina translates literally to that which feeds. Oftentimes we translate it as land, but it's land and resources. So this intimate relationship, the beauty of, and think about, we heard in the earlier panel, love. What's better than being in love in the world? Seriously, not many things, right? But let me tell you, the benefits of loving Āina, loving Mother Earth, is when you're a teenager, she doesn't break up with you and date your best friend. There's no divorce in loving the Āina. There's no separation in loving the Āina. It fundamentally roots and grounds us in our perspectives and understanding in who we are and our relationship to the places that we engage with. It defines this responsibility and relationship between Mother Earth and us to steward, to care, to protect. And I'll talk about that some later. And it frames really our modern movement in Hawaii around social justice and ecological justice. So our ancestors created, and we still cultivate and restore these incredible systems of really agroecological systems that created abundance for our islands. They were systems that were intimately connected between nature and culture. And we did so in ways that really, in ways like we hear, like eco-mimicry. By looking at the water cycle, we understood we're not going to take all of the water. We're not going to build, I usually use the Hoover Dam, but that might have a lot of resonance with this audience. So when we think of dams in an Anglo context, usually you take all of the water, right, and you stop it. Our ancestors understood, no, you take part of the water, and then when you're done with it, it returns to the stream because the ecology and the systems need to survive and live. These systems were intimately connected with these lokoi'a, or aquacultural, some of the earliest aquaculture in the world, fish ponds, where our ancestors, again, taking that water in abundance and that nutrient-rich water that flows through our tidal streams, now cultivated algae, something that's easy to proliferate, and particularly herbivorous fish, where you can get larger scales of biomass quickly than you could if you cultivated predators, right? So these are some of the cultivation techniques that our ancestors did and utilized to understand really how they would feed our people and the world. And there's some evidence that, as our populations grew, archaeologically, we had to adapt. There were periods of minor declines of nearshore systems, and we developed this fish pond technology largely to solve for that, to create more mass and abundance. Taken together, and I want to take a second here. If everyone can say the word wai again. Wai. So wai is water, that which flows, and the word for wealth in our language is wai, water, water. So an economy should be like the water cycle and system. It should flow. It should be cyclical. It should go up into the mountains, cultivate, come down as rain, provide nutrients all the way through until it reaches the ocean and the system starts again. And that understanding fundamentally shaped how our ancestors tried to create an economy, and did create an economy. And I want to stop here for a second. In the brilliant talks I heard earlier, like my ancestors and indigenous ancestors, I think we heard hunter-gatherers. What they called us was we had a subsistence economy. So as if all we did was to subsist, right? And so the tropes, and this is where Kate's work is so powerful, the tropes of economics have fundamentally reshaped how we think about people and their gifts and their contributions to the world. We did not subsist, we created abundance. And so our ancestral system really worked around the water. We developed a system of a kalai aina that mimicked the water cycle, where resources would be distributed generationally. I can get into a lot of detail here, but I don't want to lose you guys. An annual system of sort of assessment and cycling to create this state of abundance, of wai, of wealth, and that system should return and continue to flow. So in one of our publications, when we developed this concept of ancestral circular economy, this is an image of Paipaio He'ia. These are some of the key principles. I'll say it really is the prioritization of relationship building. That economic system and structure fundamentally empowered people to understand their relationships between Mother Earth, Aloha Āina, between each other, between species and resources. When it worked well, and it wasn't always highly functioning, but when it worked well, there was balanced governance structures. There was enough of top-down and bottom-up knowledge to create abundance of these resources. Let me give you an example. In Hawaii today, I sat on a body, water resource management body. We had roughly 50 staff. In ancestral systems, when this was fully functioning, you had a whole population that was intimately connected with their water resources, that knew the spawning seasons and cycles of veil fish, these particular fish, and how it changed in different regions. There was systematic and regular redistributions of wealth and power. And it promoted these really regenerative social ecological processes. And I think this is probably one of the most important concepts, is this environmental kinship, is the recognition that there is no separation between nature and culture. That actually, let me tell you guys something. Anyone not born on Earth, we are all children of Mother Earth. The framing and worldview in some ways that shape how we understand the world in science in this particular building is not true. And I want to say, if you want to learn more about these fish ponds, ironically, if you go down into the Pitt Rivers Museum, I don't know if Kate planned this, but my friends that work on these ponds are actually featured in the Pitt Rivers Museum. There's a Mauku to Makai thing. Go look at the videos and you can learn a lot more down there. Okay, our ancestral system was rapidly changed, and there was severe interventions, not just with capitalism, but with the American overthrow and overtaking of our country. These are some kind of documented collapses, if you will, since these introductions. And we've seen shifts and resource depletion and decline. The linear extractive economy is totally focused on resources. And what does it do? It degrades them. We need more hotels. Okay, what do we do to get more hotels? We build all along the shores. Okay, that's not enough. We need military and militarism and dollars to support the livelihood and lives on the islands. And so these systems have brought our islands to the point of collapse, where maybe you've seen the tinderbox of one of our places, Lahaina, that burned recently and lost family members and places. So Hawaii today, any day you look in the headlines, this is kind of what it looks like. Priced out of paradise, Navy leaking jet fuel into our aquifers, families having to move away and not being able to survive. Because with all of that beauty that you saw, comes a different aspect of wealth, comes the billionaires buying up our towns, the rapid rise of real estate and these other issues. Hawaii went from that ancestral system that fed roughly 1 million people. Our population today is about 1.2 million people. Today we probably import 80% of our food. So this is what it looks like to bring food into these islands today. Mats and containers, you can imagine the carbon emissions, the fossil fuels that are associated with this, and the waste. So coming out of COVID, which was this rapid pause, first time in generations in our islands that we saw our beaches not full of sunscreen from tourists and not just overrun by bodies and activities. Natural systems started to be restored. We saw sharks returning to areas in our nearshore fisheries that we don't normally see. We saw turtles laying eggs and nesting in areas where they would never go to. It was an amazing time. And so in that period, a group of myself and my friends, we created this Āina Aloha Economic Futures. Deeply inspired by the circular economy work that was happening in Europe, Kate's work of Doughnut Economics. In fact, I told them, put Kate's work right on our library. She was first on our library in this period. And it fundamentally helped us to, during that pause, and if you remember, the status quo was threatened. We didn't know what that would look like. And that gave us not just the courage, but the opportunity to engage fundamentally in reshaping what our economy would look like for our islands. These are our values: Aloha Aina, environmental kinship, ecological and social justice, opuali'i. Leaders need to have care. Opuali'i is like this feeling that you have in your stomach, caring for a child, caring for a pet. What was the name of the armadillo that was named? Or we heard that story earlier. His wife opened up to it. Pablo, yes. That feeling, connection to Pablo. Imi oi kela kela is being driven by innovation and design. And ho'okipa is, we recognize we have to be inclusive. I don't like, so the word tribalism is actually misused. If you've been among tribes of people, it's the most caring, loving situation that you can be in. So please don't use tribalism to say the partisanship and militarism and sort of hate that's mongered in contemporary society. But in Hawaii, we understand ho'okipa is something else. We have to host, we have to be inclusive, we have to love. These are roughly our goals, and I'm not going to get into a lot of them, but focused on issues that were really relevant to our islands. And I want to say that ancestral circular economy, again, I can only speak for my lineage and genealogy and place in Hawaii, maybe a little bit in the Pacific, but maybe when we think about circularity, the development of donuts across the world, how do we understand the economies that existed before in those places, that were intimately tied to place, that were regenerative, that created abundance, and we need to uplift that. So in one of our papers, we just try to look at the ancestral circular economy, these universal circular economy policy goals, and how Āina Aloha Economic Futures is sort of embedded and trying to achieve that amongst these circles. And what I want to say is these are incredibly difficult times, and we need to build a team. We need to build love. We need to cultivate it together to solve the greatest crisis that our world has ever faced. And it's incredibly important to love, to create relationships and nurture with each other. And I've seen the end of the road, and at the end of the road for us is Āina. The thing about loving Āina is even it's always going to love you. Even the most terrible, toxic people that I think the Āina should reject. What happens? And maybe that's some of the world leaders I can think of right now. But they too become soil, right? They too become the systems that create abundance and life in our islands again. That shows you about that healing part of our world, of Āina. And so what's it like at the end of your road? Where are you going to? What are the structures and bumps that are there, and how can we support each other to get along that way? And I want to hand it over to my amazing, brilliant, it feels incredible to say colleague. Kate and I started collaborating only online. Kate is the only person in the history of my professional relationships that I've invited to Hawaii that said, "I'm sorry, I don't fly." And so it's an incredible privilege to work together and to conspire. And so I'll hand it over to Kate.
Hi, thanks, Kamana. What is at the end of the road? I'm going to be really honest. At the end of the road I was raised on is so far from where Kamana stands and speaks from. I feel a huge gulf of worldview, of cosmovision, of learning. And I want to acknowledge the generosity of Kamana coming here and sharing this worldview with us, of Geraldine, of Laila, of Mindahi, of Mac, of Nanine, of others, everybody who's come here, whether as a visitor to this conference or a student in this university or an academic in this university, and speaking here of this very, very different worldview. It's so generous. And Laila invited us to give reciprocity. I think we owe reciprocity. So I'm going to speak to the worldview that actually many of us, European, British, God forbid, English, were raised with. I'm going to name it because I feel this huge gulf, and Mac said it, we need to build bridges. We're going to talk about finding a bridge between these worlds that are speaking intermittently together in this conference, but so different. So I hear Kamana speaking of this world, the web of life, of Āina Aloha, of Mother Nature, of harmony, balance, and we've heard it again and again from our visitors and friends here. So I need to be honest and say what else is in this room, what's always in this room, because it was created in this room, in this university, and universities like this one, and it's in our minds unless we out it and make it visible. So here's the 20th century Western economics. I was taught in this university that many of you, if you've ever studied Western economics, raise your hand. Yeah, right, look at us, we're all in the room. And if you never studied it, don't worry, you got it anyway. In the newspapers, in the politicians' speeches, in the analysis, in the corporations, we've all been bathed in this. Let's name it. The first image we're taught, economists, what's the first image you remember learning? Supply and demand. The market, welcome to the market. It's price at the center of our concern. The portrait of humanity is rational economic man, so rational, as Max said. He stands alone with money in his hand, with ego in his heart, with a calculator in his head. He hates work, he loves luxury, he knows the price of everything, and he can never get enough. These are the parameters we put into our equations. This is who we are told we are, and by the way, we start to mimic him. We start to think this is what it means to be economic, and we change. We're shaped and remade by the models that we make. And the goal, of course, it's growth, endlessly. And nationally, it's GDP. My pension, it's returns. In my bank account, in my company, it's return on return, it's profit, accumulation. Of course, This is the design of the system that we've been raised in, that we've inherited. So I feel so far. When we say, where is nature? Where is the living world? Oh, an economist will tell you that gap between the social and the private cost, there she is, that little red wedge, that's climate breakdown. You want to see biodiversity loss there? It's that red wedge. It's all in that little red wedge. That's how we make nature and her loss visible in our diagrams. Where is she in relation to humanity? Well, we're at the top of the pyramid. I mean, she's a Lego block to build with. She's our resource. And growth, well, actually, the living world only gives us a little bit. Water is only a tiny fraction of our national income because it's about human ingenuity and technology. So we can just grow and grow and grow. We'll have enough to clean up later. Who are we kidding? So I was raised here, and I know many of you were too. And Kamana is speaking to us, and many of our friends and visitors are speaking from so far away. How can we bridge this? So the first gesture our society makes is to say, well, natural capital, ecosystem services. But it's still rooted in a language that pulls me back to this finance and this growth, natural capital, because we want a return on this. We have to go further. So I'm going to introduce a story about the donut that I've been amazed and honored and humbled by the role it's playing for some people in helping us move across this bridge. Here is a donut. You don't have to eat them. This is the only one that's good for you. It's conceptual. Think of humanity's, so here's the Western language I often use. Think of humanity's use of Earth's resources. I would love somebody here to help me reframe that. Our interaction with Earth's sources and cycles, radiating out from the center of that picture. So the hole in the middle of the donut is where people are falling short on life's essentials, where people do not have the food, water, health, education, housing, income, voice, that every person has a claim to. I can say that because they're crowdsourced from the SDGs. The power of doing that is that all the world's governments have already agreed that every person in the world has a right not to live in that hole, leave no one in the hole. But as we draw on Earth's resources for our needs and our so very many wants, we start to put pressure on her systems. We start to overshoot these planetary boundaries. Again, a very Western scientific recognition of something that's been known for so long elsewhere, but we're starting to name it in our own worldview. It enters. Planetary boundaries, that's new. It was certainly big news to me. And I, as a social justice, I was working at Oxfam when I first saw them, so I drew a circle inside their circle. If there are outer limits of planetary pressure, there are inner limits, let's call them human rights. And suddenly, the shape of progress isn't that endless growth, it's thriving in balance. I invite you with your hands. Yeah, it's like a heartbeat. It makes sense in our bodies. You look lovely, by the way. It makes sense in our bodies. So the donut, can it help us bridge? And Kamana and I had a long conversation. Where should it be? And I said, I feel bad putting it in the middle. Like, that's really presumptuous. And we Westerners always think we're closer than, oh, no, there's actually going to be so much further to go. And he invited me to put it in the middle, saying, it's so far away from this, at least it's reaching towards. So I want to say, and many other ways of thinking, well-being economics, economy of the common good, degrowth movement, many, many other gestures. This is just one. We need so many ways of reaching to each other, connecting. What thrilled me is that some places, some city, local councils have, trying to escape from this, have started using the donut. So this thriving living world, right? Can we rename it in this language? They've started using the donut, and they say, can our city live in the donut? They got in touch. Mayors and councillors, what would it mean? Can we try and live in the donut here? So we said, well, let's unroll it. Let's make some space. And there's just a very little question there, except it's not a little question. It's a massive question. I invite you to think of a place you know intimately, you love and care for, whether it's a city or a town or a village or a district or state. How can our city or this place become a home to thriving people in an ecologically thriving place, while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet? Yes, that is a complex question. It's complex times. We can break it down into four. So we look at the local aspirations and the global connections. And I'm going to this is what we call the four lenses of Donut Unrolled. I'm going to go very quickly. Can all the people of this place thrive? That is a local question. What does it mean for everyone to thrive here? Who's not thriving? How do we enable them to thrive? This is what actually most local councils focus on, quite rightly. But we also have to ask, can this place be as generous as the wildland next door? Here in Oxford, that's Whiteton Woods. If we were to go to Whiteton, we would see that she sequesters carbon, she stores groundwater, she cools the air from the treetops to the forest floor, houses biodiversity. Could we create cities that do that, that are as generous as the places in which they're nestled? So these are the local aspirations, and it feels great to be here. But, as every place of the global north especially must recognize, we draw on the whole world for this. Look at this room. I mean, the clothes we're wearing, the electronics, the lights, the carpets, the chairs, this was not made here. It's enabling this quality of education. So what is the impact on the whole planet? Our overshoot of planetary boundaries, that's the overshoot of planetary boundaries. How do we come back within our energy and material use, our share? But also the people who stitch the clothes, who pack the food, who assemble these phones. Are they paid decent wages? The impacts on people now of climate breakdown. So these are the four lenses, and we invite cities to look at themselves in the face through these four lenses. It's not easy. There's now over 80 towns and cities around the world, but these are local governments that have actively, publicly said we're using this framework to reimagine our place. And some of them are bridging from where I stand towards the middle. Here's just two, Barcelona. They unroll the donut, they gathered the data, they re-roll the donut. That's brave, that's not pretty. That's overshoot and shortfall. That's the story they need to turn around. And they're more ambitious than many European cities with their super blocks. Really ambitious policy. This is part of their journey of moving back. Cornwall Council, here in the UK, created the donut as a decision-making wheel. Every infrastructural decision, they now put it through this wheel. Or they've created a long-term compass for calming back within. If I told you Cornish GDP has grown by 1.3% in the last year, don't quote me, it hasn't. But if I told you it had, what does that mean? 1.3% more of what? Oil spills? Divorce? Bike lanes? But this tells us in traffic-like colors what's getting better, what's getting worse. It visually tells us life in its own terms. So there's just a couple of places. We've put out a report if you're interested, our platform, doughuneconomics.org. My colleague assembled this report. We are learning from places. How are you escaping from that mindset? And how are you getting started, trying to cross that bridge towards a worldview that you know makes sense, but that your entire culture around you is pulling you back? So we're bridging. Some places starting to move. And that's amazing. But what's really surprised and honored me is that folks like Kamana, reaching back from the other side, connecting with the donut as a halfway point to a worldview that they're forced to interact with because it's the dominant system in the world. A Maori scholar, Taina Boasadeen, she redrew the donut in a way that made sense to her. So playing with it. The government of Bhutan have said we're drawing on this and putting it together with our concept of gross national happiness to reimagine the future of the city of Thimphu. Can we use this concept here? It's a huge honor that they would choose to engage with this concept, reaching out towards people whose voices they need to speak to, that maybe this halfway point makes sense. And then this work here now with Kamana and this Āina Aloha Economic Futures. How can we embrace the ancestral circular economy? So let's sit down together. Let's get onto this bridge. And think about how we can move further across. So let's start with this. Words matter, right? Words matter, pictures matter. And when I first started, I'm going to get close to you. When I first started having conversations with Kamana, I was like, hang on, sometimes you say Aloha Aina, and sometimes you say Āina Aloha. I'm getting confused. So this says, what does this say?
So Aloha Aina.
Say it, folks. What does it mean?
Aloha is an action. It's a verb that has to be done to something in this context. So aloha in this isn't stative. So you have to, aloha, you have to actively love, care for, cherish Aina, that which feeds. So if there's one thing from this concept, instead of thinking of land What if you thought of it as that which feeds? What kinds of decisions would you make differently to care for that which feeds?
And then this says?
And if we move it this way, Āina Aloha.
Say it.
That which feeds us, our lands, are in a state of love. They're beloved, they're cared for, they're cherished. So in forming our organization, that's the goal, is to have that which feeds, that which nourishes us, cares for us, in a state of love.
Brilliant. So let's put Āina Aloha there. Okay. So I want to get down into the economics, right, underneath all of this. And at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, when we talk with companies, lots of companies come, oh, we love the donut. It's a great logo. Yeah, that. We could be a donut company. We say, hang on, we don't want to talk about the design of your products. I'm sure they're great, but we want to talk about the design of your company. We want to talk about how you are actually deeply designed. And we have 5 deep design traits. I like things on cardboard, but I'll put them up on the screen too. So, dear company, think of a company, you know, think of one you love, you hate, big one, small one, any company. What is its purpose? Why does this company exist in the world? What is it in service of? Its networks, its relationship, its employees, suppliers, customers, industry allies, lobby relations. Is it living out its values in these? Is it showing its purpose through how it relates to those it's related to? How is this company governed? I mean, who's even in the room when decisions get made? What are the metrics of success? Who has voice here? Now, I call this corporate psychotherapy because the deeper we go, the more profound it gets. So how is this company owned? Is it owned by a family for 300 years, by its employees, by shareholders, by venture capital, by the state? Because how it's owned is going to profoundly shape what sits at the bottom of this psychotherapy tree, which is finance, which is the money. Where is that money that drives this company? Where is it coming from? And therefore, what is it expecting? And what is it extracting? And what is it reinvesting? What is it extracting for those who own and expect extraction? And what is it reinvesting in the purpose? So this is the conversation we always have with companies. Because to me, then we're really getting down to the deep design of the economics, that we can tell whether a company truly is designed to be in service to a purpose that's bigger than itself, or actually everything is designed to be in service of finance and extraction for those owners. And that gets down to the heart of capital. So when we were talking about getting together and having this conversation, I started coming with, and I suddenly realized even this language is loaded with my culture's assumptions about the kinds of concepts. Do you want to share? So here's one we made together.
So on the back of a chocolate box, I believe, and after some wonderful dinner with your family, we sat together and brainstormed. And thinking about that, when we discussed purpose, purpose is a beautiful thing. We can all define our purpose, the things we want to accomplish. But from our context, ancestrally, while you may have an individual purpose, you have a larger responsibility. So I do what I do because my grandmother worked and gave her entire life to children, youth, our islands. I was born into that responsibility. Our community mobilizes to restore fish ponds, to spend sweaty hours in the sun, limited pay, because we know we have a responsibility to feed future generations, to live in dignity with the ancestral innovations that our kupuna means our ancestors created. And rather than networks, great to have networks, that's why I put my picture up there. Want to have more networks, not trying to attack it. But we have to think in terms of relations, relationships between Mother Earth, between each other, continents, governance, individuals? What are the relationships that we cultivate? And that gives us a sense of shared responsibility. We can decide and understand agreements. So there's ways in which we treat the Āina. We do modify the landscape. But when we do so, it should be done in a way that benefits 6, 7 generations down the line. So those fish ponds that I showed you were created over 900 years ago. Survived tidal waves, tsunamis, every natural disaster, hurricanes in our islands. But the bones of that fish pond remain for 900 years so that people of my generation could decide we're going to restore them. We're going to provide abundance and feed our people again. Instead of ownership, we have knownership. Are you known by your lands and place? Does the land know you? Yeah. And we struggled with this. Finance was the hardest one, I thought. But we talked about flows. It's about flows of resources, the things that bind are you known by the land? What are your agreements, your relations, and your responsibility? And to flow like white.
And this flows, again, it's way, right? It's way. It's so, we were talking about the finance, the language of finance. I want my finance to be liquid, and it's used in a watery way, and it literally means way in your language, but it flows. So I'm feeling really playful here. Because this never goes away. I just really want to acknowledge, listening this morning and yesterday, and Nikki said, where's Nikki? He said you spoke to somebody, you showed a photograph from the woman you spoke to, indigenous woman. She said, what is it you don't understand? And partly by putting this up, I'm trying to say it. I don't know if it's what is it we don't understand. It's definitely what we weren't raised deep within. But I want to say, what is it you are still attached to? We are still attached to this. And here it is. I just have to do this. Just here comes finance. Here comes finance. Always in the room, don't think it's gone away just because we're talking about Earth. Finance is here. Finance. Finance wants the people to know it's green. It's green, but finance still wants to accumulate. This is what all of this is problematic with, because this finance doesn't want to flow. Finance wants to accumulate. Is GDP or in your pension fund, we are utterly dependent upon a system in which finance accumulates. And this, to me, is, we're not going to solve this. We're not going to cross that bridge unless we change finance. And let's just remember one thing about finance. Everything Kamana has been sharing and showing is earth. It's real. It's natural. It's billions of years old. It makes sense. Finance. Yeah, look at me when I talk to you. Finance. Are you natural? Oh. Are you a human construct? Mm-hmm. Does that mean we could actually reinvent you? Yes, we could. Let's just remember, finance is a human construct. We made this. It's nothing real, there's nothing innate, there's nothing immutable, inherent. Finance is a design, totally made up by us, but completely, it's stopping us from reconnecting. So we need to remake finance, whether it comes in yellow or green form. We need to redesign finance. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how. I just know that this hosepipe is always on the stage. And if we don't bring it in and talk about it, it is going to drive us and keep pulling us back here, right? Back here in this mindset. And I also want to say, this is still what's taught to economists in this university, in all Western universities. This is the shape of progress. It's rising and it's measured in finance. And until we stop teaching the next generation to think like this, we're just replicating this mindset and then wondering why we're a gulf away. We have some more cardboard for you. More cardboard that came up over supper. So someone like me, I trotted off to university, studied economics, because I thought I would then know the mother tongue of public policy. So I'm an economist. Hello. Actually, you never would say, hello, I'm an economist. People just go and get another drink. So economics. And then we get excited. I certainly got excited. No, look, we're doing new economics. We're doing new economics. And actually, we can reclaim this and have some new ideas. Kamana, have you ever heard of the circular economy? We are going to bring the circular economy to Hawaii. We're going to teach you new economics. All these people and places, we ignore what you already knew. We've got new economics.
So I believe it's imperative, as we are trying to solve for this, the snake of finance, and to redesign our economies in places around the world, to understand what indigenous people knew of their economy, of their place, of circularity, of creating systems that are regenerative in love and abundance.
And two things I want to say. This concept comes from a Maori scholar called Shane Edwards. And I really appreciate, I want you budge me this way, because what Kamana and others and those who are here generously sharing, you are helping people like me, many of us, right? You're with the K, the canoe economics, you're helping us humbly say, oh, we don't have all the new economic answers. It was known. And actually, can we connect and can we cross this bridge? And can we find our way back to an earth? And can we rewrite the economic syllabus so finance is dethroned and reinvented? Okay, yeah. Okay. We have a question here. Okay, this is, people always ask the hardest questions. What do you think of alternative forms of economic exchange aside from money? Do you want to have a crack at that?
Yes, I think they're happening all the time in this model. People's responsibility and their relations form where we spend our time and resources. And so I love the share apps, the initiatives of establishing small-scale trade relationships between people and families. I think that's all really critical and important. And in fact, those are sometimes, as we're restoring our ancestral systems of food and fish, if it doesn't go to the market, right, it doesn't count towards GDP. And so sometimes when people measure sustainability, how much are we feeding ourselves, all of those things are lost. So we do have to consider those alternative forms of exchange that are real and feeding towards Mother Earth. The things that provide abundance and resource are the ones that we should uplift.
I've just remembered I have a question for you, because I want to push the donut. So I'm aware that the donut helps connect, but the more that I get invited to stand in the middle of this bridge and I'm invited by and connected with folks like Kamana, the more, that feeling of the more you know, the less you know. And the more I see the dangers and shortfalls of it and the much further there is to go. So it's hard for me to do this, but I'm going to do this. Because I know that this is a very valuable concept, and but we also need to go beyond. It needs to keep rolling. It's a donut for a shape. It's on the roll. So at one level, the donut literally centers people, right? It centers people, not capital. That's why it helps us move. But if you look at the 9 planetary boundaries, one is different from all of the others. It's called biodiversity loss. It's got all other living beings in it. And the danger is if we do this badly, if we move weakly, that we end up centering ourselves while losing our kin. So what if, for me, this is one of those conceptual leaps that you can only make when you've gone so far. What if we were to open up the hole in the circle and invite all other living beings in there with us? Which again, I'm sure many of you in the room from a Cosmovision saying, welcome, folks, like, get on board. But it's that step. So, Kamana, would you just reflect on what kinds of relations and agreements do you feel your culture already holds and that we can learn to hold if we're all here together?
Yeah, so in our culture, one of the key indicators of health of all those things in the middle of the donut now goes back to water, to wai. If our streams flow and are healthy, they connect our mountain resources and our marine resources, and they provide abundance and flow. So I think putting those in the middle requires us to think about, again, our relationships with the most essential things that provide life. And think about water. Think about, in my naive perspective, a measure of the development, the civilization of society should be how they treat their water. Because water is what gives life to everything in there. And I think it's absolutely fundamental and critical and courageous of Kate to consider that this is the alternative. This is the vision and movement forward.
So there are many places on this bridge, and there's no one. Many of us, I certainly couldn't jump from the economics I was taught to your worldview. We can't appropriate it. As Mac was saying, we have to find our own. I have to find my own stories, my own culture, my own practices, my own belief system. And I'm on such a similar journey to you, but in the realm of economics. And different people find different portals along the way valuable. So some people say, oh, the donut, it's such a transformative concept. This changes my worldview. And other people I've encountered say, it's anthropocentric, go further. You've got to get biocentric. And all of these places are valuable if they're helping us move. So I would invite, I know we're asked for action out of this conference. I would invite us all to think of our own mindset. How can I change the way I speak about the living world? How can I change the diagrams I teach, I learn, I replicate? How can I change the practices, at least to help myself and others behind me, to bring them with me, and those in front of me to move towards them? How can we each keep ourselves moving? And then also maybe to remember it's not a linear bridge, it's probably a circle, and you go all the way around and you find that others already knew economics. Do you have any thought of the action that we can bring from here?
So figuring out how to reconnect with your resources, how to aloha aina. So if that activates on an individual level, fantastic. I think it's supporting initiatives that do love and care for resources, and I'll get to direct action issues, for instance. As an indigenous person around the world, I don't think we should be the only ones defending our resources, and we're not. And if bodies can't be there with us, what are the ways in which you can support that care and that concern? Because when the military is poisoning an aquifer, it's not my rational mind that says, I'm going to go stand up against the US Navy. That sounds like a great idea. It comes from a deep place of care. And it's incredibly difficult and vulnerable. I remember when that was happening, my uncle, I'm out speaking out on these issues. My uncle said, the Navy is trained to kill people, right? Yeah, I know. So how can we support courageous actions? And Kate is courageous. Courageous actions everywhere in intervening with the economy. What Kate's model has brought to the world has allowed communities like us to argue at seats of table that before they could just write us off because the economy is based on GDP, it's growth, it's linear, it's extractive, and that's how it is. And Kate's work has made it more viable for people to not be able to ignore our efforts. So support courageous activity, love your land and place, reconnect yourself and your families to your resources, and figure out how you can connect and care for your water.
I think we have time for one question from the room. Yes, yourself, yeah. Big question. I'll give a brief, okay. So when you say global finance, I suppose you mean money that's investing, that's owned by someone, an institution somewhere, and is investing somewhere else. I want to go, so I know this conference is both what is the best we can do with the constructs we currently have, and then today is saying, and then let's let ourselves go beyond that as well. So I don't want to, I mean, my thought is, I don't think we'll succeed by only redirecting finance. I think we need to redesign finance, whether it's global or local. I think we need that's why hosepipe here is so. This thing is designed, it's invented, it's made. It's insane that this human construct, which of course accumulates power and it's designed to accumulate. That's what it wants to do. It wants a rate of return, and I find myself just continually asking why. Earth is in the hands it's currently in. Earth is dying, and finance wants its return. This is what we have to deconstruct and redesign. So it's so much, I can say that. I don't know how we begin to do that with global finance, but I'm not willing to say, okay, finance exists and it's there. It's there, and we just have to learn to work with it, because this design is unnatural. Nothing in life grows forever and succeeds. It's in our bodies, it's a cancer. It will destroy the systems on which it depends. Everything in life is a flow, and it returns into the system, and it's a cycle. And finance is a total outlier of that. So I think we have to deeply redesign finance, and that comes back to people, because all finance is owned by someone. And therefore the expectations and the demands of the very wealthy particularly, who still want more. So it deeply comes back to who we tell ourselves we are, and this need for never getting enough. So I don't know the answer, but I'm just going to give an answer from there. I think we won't get an answer until we redesign finance. I don't think the finance as it's humanly invented and constructed is compatible with life, conducive to life.
I have to agree with Kate. I think we have to redesign. And I say that recognizing the challenges of what it's like to work on the community grassroots level, where it is critical and important for people to get resources to be able to continue as NGOs. So it's not an either or, but the goal can't be sustainability. We don't want to sustain that graph that I showed you for Hawaii. Increased militarism, decreased carbon. No, we do have to redesign the institution and the structure itself. And finance runs in. A great friend of mine wanted to create this sustainable agricultural effort built on archaeological and ancestral principles for managing resources. He had a whole model. He was going to only return 7%. Finance said, we're not going to fund it. It's not good enough. We need 15. So if that continues to happen in our communities, we will never solve this issue.
On which point, we will not be divided by finance. We're going to close in one of the best ways to connect. We're going to close with a song. So would you like to tell us?
So we worked hard on this and tried to think of what we could do to end our session. And, we began this water pilgrimage, and I was brought with such care and grace. And there was so much effort involved in reconnecting, ancestrally to some of the names and the waterways of this place. And as Kate and I talked, we said we want to sing a song that reminds us of how connected we can be to a resource. And this particular resource this is from the view from my balcony. This is Mauna Kea. This is one of our sacred mountains. It's an ancestor to our people, a site of incredible struggle, where myself and my neighbors and families, had to be involved in direct action to try to better steward this sacred place. And I want to share that today there will be a ceremony in Hawaii on solstice honoring Mauna Kea. And I called back to our communities. I didn't know this was happening, so we're singing to you folks, we're singing to home, and we're singing to my grandmother and my uncle collaborated to write this song. So we're singing to, imagine your grandparents your uncles, the people that loved you and got all of you here. Dr. Cornel West says, we're all here because someone loved us. I have a 7-month-old daughter. I understand that deeply. We don't get into this room without care and love, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or you guys got Labor and something else, but it's about love. So if we can go here, it's called The Beauty of Mauna Kea.
Turn the mics off.
He lei kea noho mai lai ka mauna ki. I luna ku kila. Kila no luna. O luna i ke au. My friend and I would sometimes roam trails of Mauna Kea. In the evening we'd come home, see her standing there. The moon moves around her when she sleeps. The clouds stand beside her when she weeps. And I could be forgotten and 1,000 miles away. Still I would recall the beauty of Mauna Kea. Now to any land you go, she will be with you if you love her like I do. Oh, Mauna Kea. And I live in the city now, and I see different things. In the nights when I'm alone, she is in my dreams. The wind spins around her when she wakes. The sun spreads its warmth across her face. And I could be forgotten and 1,000 miles away, still I would recall the beauty of Mauna Kea. Now to any land you go, she will be with you if you love her like I do.
So I promised you a special session. Yeah, I had no idea. Thank you so much, Kate and Kamana, for doing what today is about, speaking from the heart and being brave. And we don't know exactly how this all plays out, but we know we have to change the system. We cannot stay confined within the system. And so thank you so much for your bravery and for the love that you've brought to the room. So maybe another round of applause for Kate and Kamana.